No one believed an alien could be saved by a lowly human mercenary from the sex slave trade of the lawless Zax Prime outpost, but that was before Benjamin Perry quick-drawed his plasma revolver, vaporized a vicious alien crime lord's head, and messily decapitated one of his thugs with their own wicked hooked blade. Perry drowned sorrows in strong alien whiskey, trying to forget his last botched job in the seedy bar on lawless Zax Prime Station. Outside, blaster fire erupted. The door crashed open, and a small, blue-skinned Vorkarian girl ran in terrified. 4 huge thugs followed, led by notorious Sire-Father Kalmarek himself. Perry knew him as a brutal abductor who trafficked young alien girls for the sinister Obsidian Syndicate. Against all judgment, Perry stepped between the girl and Kalmarek, who sneered, "Out of my way, scum, she's our property now," barbed tail twitching. Perry's reply was drawing in a flash, vaporizing most of the alien's head. The thugs roared in fury, lunging with blades out. Perry grabbed the girl, dived behind the bar under sizzling plasma bolts, and shouted for her to stay low. Popping up, he snap-fired, dropped one, rolled to new cover. The biggest thug crashed over swinging, but Perry kicked his knee out and rolled the howling alien, whipping his face with a gun barrel. Flipping him, Perry grabbed the dropped blade and hacked the thug's head messily off. Rising, Perry found the last thug with the girl in a chokehold, blaster to her head. "Drop it or she dies, human!" Perry raised his hands, letting the gun clatter down. The thug grinned, aiming at Perry's heart. Fast as light, Perry hurled the severed head. The shot went wide. The girl twisted free. Perry snatched his holdout laser and burned a hole through the thug's chest. Enforcement drones were incoming to investigate shots fired now. Grabbing the sobbing girl, Perry shoved her into his grav bike, gunned it, and tore off down neon streets with sirens wailing into the night and drones in hot pursuit to arrest him for multiple homicides. Perry gunned the grav bike, weaving it through the twisting alleys and seedy backstreets of Zax Prime's grimy undercity. The Vorkarian girl clung to his back, thin arms locked tight around his chest, face buried against his jacket. Behind them, a swarm of enforcement drones doggedly pursued, hovering on growling repulsors. Angry red targeting lasers stabbed out at the speeding bike, seeking a target lock. A low-hanging catwalk caught Perry's eye up ahead. He revved the grav bike and yanked back hard on the handlebars, angling the nose up. The bike leapt, slamming down onto the narrow metal walkway. The catwalk shuddered and groaned under the sudden weight as Perry gunned the bike down its length. Suddenly, an enforcement drone dropped from above, like a steel raptor, hovering right in their path. Perry swerved hard, the bike skidding. For a sickening instant, the bike teetered on the catwalk's edge, Perry and the girl inches from pitching off into the yawning abyss below. The drone opened fire, stitching a line of white-hot craters across the catwalk. The scorched, blasted metal gave way with a tortured shriek. The bike plummeted down into the darkness. Perry grabbed the girl and kicked free, snagging a dangling support cable. They swung out in a wild arc, then smashed through an apartment window in an explosion of shattered glass. Perry hit the floor in a tight roll, coming up in a crouch. The girl tumbled past him. In the dim light, he saw 2 Vorkarian mercenaries surge to their feet, cards scattering from an overturned table. One merc scrabbled for a blaster on his belt. Perry launched himself forward, snap-kicking the merc in the throat. The Vorkarian reeled back, gagging. The second merc whipped out a wicked-looking knife, slashing at Perry's face. Perry caught the merc's knife hand at the wrist. He twisted savagely, bones snapping. The merc howled in agony. Perry headbutted him in the face, crunching cartilage. The merc crumpled. "Stay down!" Perry barked at the terrified girl huddled behind a ratty couch. He sprinted for the apartment door, the girl stumbling after him. They burst out into the hallway. A human man lurched out of the door across the hall, bloodshot eyes wide with shock. Perry barreled past him, shoving the gawking man aside. The Vorkarian girl dodged around him. Perry hit the stairwell at a dead run, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The girl scrambled up behind him, panting. They crashed out onto the roof. Enforcement drones buzzed angrily in the air overhead, zeroing in on them. "Shit!" Perry spat. He shoved the girl behind an air processing unit. "Keep your head down, kid!" Reaching down, he drew a pair of sleek quantum pulse pistols from cross-draw quick-release holsters. Diving out into the open, he fired the guns akimbo. The recoil hammered at his wrists. The pistols bucked and spat strobing blue pulses of plasma. Drones exploded under the salvo, cartwheeling through the air. One drone swept in behind Perry, raking the rooftop with shrieking plasma bolts. Craters erupted across the roof in a stitched line. Perry threw himself sideways, rolling. Lying prone, he poured fire into the drone's underside, ventilating its internals. Smoking, the drone spiraled out of control and smashed into the roof. Perry kipped up to his feet. The pistol's power cores were drained. He popped the cores, slapped in fresh ones. A monstrous armored drone rose up before him, a nightmare of whirling blades and thrusting gun barrels. It hung there, humming ominously. "Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me," Perry groaned. Holstering his pistols, he yanked a concussion grenade from his belt. Priming it with a flick of his thumb, he charged headlong at the drone. At the last instant, he dropped into a baseball slide, whipping the grenade up to slap it onto the drone's undercarriage as he skidded beneath it. The grenade went off like a thunderclap. The drone vanished in a roiling fireball. Shrapnel rained down, pinging off the roof. Perry rolled to his feet, ears ringing, soot streaking his face. The Vorkarian girl peeked out from behind the air processing unit, staring at him in awe. Perry grabbed her hand, yanking the girl to her feet. Together they ran for the roof's edge. The girl balked, trying to pull free, but Perry scooped her up into his arms and vaulted off the roof into open space. They plummeted, the night rushing up to meet them. Suddenly Perry's grav pack roared to life, kicking like a mule. The howling suspensors slowed their descent, but they still hit the filthy alley below hard. Perry took the brunt of the impact, his legs flexing. He lost his balance. They went sprawling across the grimy permacrete. Groaning, Perry climbed to his feet. His whole body felt like one massive bruise. The Vorkarian girl lay crumpled beside him, knocked cold. Perry gathered the limp girl up in his arms and slung her over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. Staggering slightly, he lurched off down the alley, vanishing into the neon-drenched shadows. All around, the nightlife of Zax Prime's seediest underbelly rolled on without pause. Garishly lit pleasure houses throbbed with murky red light. Spice dealers lurked in trash-strewn doorways, hawking their brain-rotting wares. Drunks, addicts, and degenerates of every species sprawled in the gutters. A bleeding, soot-stained human, carrying the unconscious form of a Vorkarian girl, barely merited a second glance from the dead-eyed dregs haunting these streets. In this festering armpit of the galaxy, it was just another night. Perry kicked open the door to his rented shithole room at the Red Lotus Hotel, a flophouse that asked no questions. He dumped the half-conscious Vorkarian girl on the lumpy, cum-stained mattress. Rummaging through his pack, he dug out a half-empty tube of synth skin and a roll of pressure tape. He slapped the tape over the girl's wounds, trying to staunch the bleeding. Her eyes fluttered open, luminous green orbs in the dingy light. What happened?" she croaked, her Terran heavily accented. "I'm Perry, Benjamin Perry. You're safe for now. Kalmarek's thugs won't be bothering you again." She struggled to sit upright, wincing. "I am Zira. My people, we are slaves now, sold like Itzka at market since the cataclysm took our world." "Yeah, I'd heard Vorkarians were going for premium lately in the Syndicate's flesh rackets." Perry stepped into the cramped fresher unit, keying his wrist comm. "Myrmidon, it's Perry. I need a meet." "Perry?" Myrmidon's gravelly voice crackled. "What's so fucking important?" "I've got a Vorkarian girl that needs to disappear." "Vorkarian, how old?" "Young, prime age for the brothels." "Bring her to the kill pit, we'll talk price." Perry signed off and turned to find Zira standing behind him, ears flat against her skull, teeth bared. She hissed and lashed out, raking her claws across his face. Perry reeled back, crashing against the fresher wall. "You lied, you human skull. You are no different than the others," Zira spat. Perry grabbed her wrists, pushing her back. "Damn it, I'm trying to help you." "Help? By selling me to another slaver? We are nothing but meat to you." That was just bullshit for Myrmidon. He can get you off this rock, set you up someplace the Syndicate will never find you. Zira struggled in his grip. "Why would you do this? What do you want from me?" Perry released her, wiping blood from his cheek. Not a damn thing. I killed Kalmarek and half his crew to keep you out of a whorehouse. If I just wanted to sell you, why bother with the fucking heroics? Zira stared at him, confusion and anger warring on her delicate features. I don't understand. I want you to have a chance, kid. I'm sick of seeing the Syndicate ruin lives. Zira cocked her head, brow furrowed. Her eyes flashed silver. Perry felt the barest brush of her mind against his, probing. Her eyes went wide. Yossi, you are telling the truth. The kill pit was packed, the smell of cheap booze and stale sweat hanging thick. Perry scanned the crowd, spotting Myrmidon at his usual table. He wove through the press of bodies, sliding into the booth. Where's the girl? Safe. What's your price? For prime Vorkarian snatch, 50 large Confed creds. 50? You're out of your fucking mind. You want my services or not, Merc? I got buyers lined up around the block for a piece that choice. Perry opened his mouth to argue, then froze. A hulking Vorkarian was pushing through the crowd, headed straight for Myrmidon's table. Grom Kresh, Kalmarek's chief enforcer. Perry felt his blood run cold. Shit, we'll talk later. Perry slid out of the booth, keeping his head down. He circled wide around Grom Kresh, drifting into the shadows at the edge of the room. Grom Kresh reached Myrmidon. The two bent their heads together, speaking intently. Perry pulled a compact parabolic mic from his coat. He thumbed it on, aiming it at the booth. I sold her to you for half that. And I'm telling you it's double now that I know she's got Benjamin fucking Perry playing White Knight. You want the little cunt or not? Perry's jaw clenched. That weaselly fuck Myrmidon had sold him out. He drew a wicked-looking mag rifle from under his coat, flicking off the safety. He raised the rifle, drawing a bead on Grom Kresh's skull. Suddenly, a chair smashed over someone's head. The kill pit exploded into violence, fists and bottles flying. Perry's shot went wide, pulping the skull of a drunken Xerxian. He cursed, trying to reacquire his target, but Grom Kresh was gone, vanished into the melee. Perry keyed his calm with shaking fingers. Zira, fucking answer me. Nothing. Signal jammed. Myrmidon was trying to slip out in the chaos. Perry caught him with a vicious right cross, putting him down hard. Then he was running, shoving through the riot of bodies, frantic to reach the flophouse. The door to Perry's room was smashed off its hinges. Perry hit the door, firing, rounds thundering. A goon by the bed caught two in the sternum, slamming him back in a spray of indigo blood. Another was bringing his gun up when Perry put a round through his eye. Grom Kresh rose from behind the bed, a crackling power sword in his fist. He gave a bellowing war cry and charged. Perry snap-fired. The pulse caught Grom Kresh in the shoulder, spinning him around. Perry's gun clicked empty. Grom Kresh lunged, the humming blade scything down. Perry sidestepped, the energy blade missing his head by a hair. He smashed the butt of his pistol across the Vorkarian's face, shattering teeth. Grom Kresh staggered. Perry grabbed his sword arm, twisting savagely. Bone snapped. The power sword clattered to the floor. Suddenly Zira was there, leaping onto Grom Kresh's back from the shadows with a banshee shriek. She sank her fangs into his neck, claws shredding the flesh of his face. Grom Kresh roared in pain, thrashing wildly. He slammed Zira against the wall again and again, but she hung on, ripping and tearing. Perry snatched up the fallen power sword. The blade ignited with a snap hiss. He thrust with all his strength, running Grom Kresh through. The smell of seared meat filled the air. Grom Kresh spasmed, the blade protruding from his back in a shower of sparks. Perry ripped it free. Grom Kresh collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. Perry pulled Zira off the corpse. Her face was splashed with indigo gore, her eyes wild. Shouts and thudding boots echoed from the hallway. More syndicate troops. Too many. We have to go, now. He grabbed Zira's hand and ran, sprinting down the back stairs. They burst out into the night. The alleys were swarming with armed thugs. A plasma bolt sizzled past Perry's head. He zagged into a narrow side street, yanking Zira behind him. Lungs burning, legs pumping, they plunged into the neon-soaked darkness of Zack's prime. The girl he'd risked everything to save clung to his hand, like a lifeline. The Syndicate would never stop hunting them now. This was just the beginning. But they were still alive. On Zax Prime, that was enough. For now. Perry and Zira scrambled through the dank undercity tunnels, the echoing bays of hunting beasts, and shouted commands of Syndicate hunters, dogging their steps. Perry pulled Zira into a cramped maintenance alcove, slamming the hatch closed and twisting the locking wheel. He slid down the wall, exhausted. Zira crouched next to him, luminous eyes wide in the gloom. Perry pulled a small medkit from his jacket. "Let me see that arm." Zira extended her bloodied limb. Ragged claw marks scored deep. Perry sprayed sealant foam on the wounds. It stung. Zira hissed through clenched teeth. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. Perry looked up, confused. "For what?" "For thinking you were just another slaver. Another piece of human filth." Perry shrugged. "Can't blame you. Humans haven't exactly covered themselves in glory out here." "But you're different. You risked your life for me. Why?" Perry was silent for a long moment. "I need the creds to buy information on my sister." "Your sister?" "Taken. By the Syndicate. Years ago." Perry's voice was rough with old pain. "Been hunting them since. Taking jobs to fund the search." I didn't know. I'm so sorry." "I failed her. Wasn't there when she needed me." His fist clenched. "I won't fail again." Zira laid a hesitant hand on his arm. "I understand more than you know." Perry met her gaze. Something passed between them, understanding, kinship. "There's something you should know too," Zira said softly. "I'm different. Special." "Special how?" "I'm psychic. Powerful. That's why the Syndicate wants me so badly, not just for the brothels. They want to use me." Perry's eyes widened. Psychics were rare, valuable. No wonder the Syndicate was so determined. Suddenly, a thunderous impact rocked the tunnel. Dust sifted down. A hunting beast's roar echoed far too close. Perry cursed viciously. He surged to his feet, shoving Zira behind him. The beast crashed through in a spray of rubble, multiple dead eyes swiveling. It crouched, muscles coiling beneath iridescent scales. "Zira, run!" The beast lunged as Perry drew his pistols. The monster's eyeless head split into a tooth-lined maw. Pulse rounds struck its hide, burnt flesh filling the air. It kept coming. Talons ripped stone. Perry fired till the pistols clicked empty. The beast pounced, crushing him to the ground. Rank breath washed over him. Acid-slicked jaws snapped centimeters from his face. Drool sizzled on his cheek. Suddenly Zira was there, Gromkresh's sword flashing. She leapt onto the beast's back. The blade sank to the hilt in its spine. The beast shrieked. Zira clung on as it thrashed. The sword ripped free in a spray of ichor. The beast shuddered and collapsed, Zira rolling clear. Perry staggered up. The beast lay twitching. He yanked Zira to her feet. "I thought I told you to run." Zira thrust her chin out defiantly. "I won't abandon you." Shouts echoed down the tunnel. Lights bobbed closer. The Syndicate. Perry snatched up his guns. Only a few rounds left. Not enough. He grabbed Zira's hand. "Come on." They plunged into the fog-shrouded warrens, darting down side passages. The Syndicate closed in, hunting cries echoing. Suddenly they emerged into the open, the spaceport. Ships crouched on the ferrocrete. One battered freighter caught Perry's eye. He pulled Zira toward it. She balked. "A ship? Are you insane?" "You got a better idea. It's our only shot." Plasma bolts stitched the pavement. Syndicate goons boiled out of the crowd, blasters spitting fire. Perry shoved Zira behind a refueling pump. He popped up, pulse pistols barking. A goon went down, then another. Return fire scorched the pump. Perry ducked. A bolt clipped his thigh in a spray of blood. He crashed to the ramp, blaster skittering. Zira grabbed him under the arms, dragging him up the ramp. A bolt hissed past her ear. She slapped the hatch control. It groaned closed. Perry dragged himself to the cockpit, blood pooling at every step. He fell into the pilot's chair. Fingers flew over the console. The ship rumbled to life. Bolts pinged off the hull. The freighter lurched up on straining repulsors. Thrusters flared, and it clawed for the sky. Atmo fell away. The void swallowed them. Perry sagged back, hands shaking. Zira knelt at his side. She tore a strip from her tunic and bound his wound tight. "I can't believe it. We made it." Perry managed a tight smile. "Couldn't have done it without you." "Me? You're the one who saved me." "Guess we saved each other." Azira looked at him with something like wonder. "I've never known a human like you. So brave, so driven. To find your sister, after all this time." Perry looked away. "Yeah, well, I owe her. Should have been there." "No, you're doing all you can. It's honorable." Perry barked a laugh. "Honor? I'm just a merc with a grudge." "You're more than that." Zira squeezed his hand. "Believe me." A moment passed between them, taut with unspoken understanding. The console pinged. Perry leaned forward, frowning. "We've got company, something big." The scanner showed a massive ship closing fast. Perry magnified the image. His face went slack. That's the Void Reaper, the Syndicate flagship." Zira paled. "Zorx Primoris, the worst of the worst." Her hail crackled over comms. The screen flickered. A cruel reptilian face leered out at them, eyes cold and dead. "Benjamin Perry," Zorx hissed, "you've cost me quite a prize." Perry glared back. "You'll have to take that up with my complaint department." "Oh, I intend to." Zorx smiled, revealing rows of needle teeth. "I invoke the right of Julath. You will face me in single combat. The winner claims the girl." "And if I refuse?" "Then I destroy you here and now and take what's mine anyway." Zorx spread his claws. "Your choice, thief." Perry's mind raced. He was outgunned. Nowhere to run. One way out. Fight. "Fine, transmitting docking codes now." Zira grabbed his arm. "No, you can't. He's a monster." Perry gritted his teeth, tapped controls. The freighter turned, aligning with the Reaper's Bay. "A man's got to have a code. I won't run. I won't let him hurt you." Perry met her gaze, eyes fierce. "Not while I'm still breathing." Zira opened her mouth, closed it, nodded slowly. The ship shuddered as the docking clamps engaged. Perry stood. He took up Gromkresh's sword, igniting the blade. It hummed eagerly. Perry limped to the cargo bay. The airlock cycled open. Zorx stood waiting, a void black sword in his fist. The Syndicate Lord smiled, a death's head grin. Perry activated his own blade. The sword's energy fields crackled and spit. "I've been waiting for this," Zorx purred. "Once I add your head to my wall, the Vorkarian bitch will suffer for your sins." White-hot rage surged in Perry's veins. He raised his sword. "Shut up and fight, you slaving fuck." Zorx's grin widened. He lunged, black sword burning the air. Zorx strode into the cargo bay, a hulking monstrosity of a Vorkarian, his flesh a patchwork of cybernetic implants that gleamed in the harsh light. He drew a pair of viciously serrated power blades, the edges crackling with disruptor energy. Zorx sneered at Perry's battered, bleeding form. "Pathetic human. You think you can best me? I've gutted 1,000 of your kind." Perry spat a glob of blood onto the deck. 1,001, bring it, you slaving sack of shit." Zorx roared and charged, blades whirling. Perry lunged to meet him. They clashed in a furious storm of sparks and blood, blades clashing and rebounding. Perry wove and dodged, his own blade a blur, holding his own through sheer grit and skill. But Zorx's augmented strength and speed gave him an edge. His blade slipped past Perry's guard, drawing a seeping line across Perry's ribs. Perry hissed in pain. Zorx pressed the assault, hammering at Perry with blows that numbed his arm and set his teeth rattling. Zorx's blade slashed again, carving a deep furrow across Perry's chest. Blood sheeted down his front. Perry staggered back, his blade drooping. Zorx moved in for the kill, blades poised to scissor through Perry's neck. Suddenly Zira was there, thrusting herself between them. Her eyes flared silver and she thrust out her hands. Cargo crates flew from their moorings, hurtling at Zorx like cannonballs. The crates smashed and splintered against him, staggering him back. With a snarl of contempt, Zorex slashed his hand through the air. An unseen force grabbed Zira and hurled her brutally against a bulkhead. Bones crunched. She slumped to the deck, stunned. Zorex loomed over her, blades raised. Perry staggered drunkenly to his feet behind Zorex. He lunged forward, driving Gromkresh's blade through Zorex's back with the last of his strength. The energy-sheathed blade punched out through Zorex's chest in an explosion of sparks and boiling blood. Zorex roared in agony and rage. He backhanded Perry viciously across the cargo bay. Perry flew through the air and crashed into a stack of crates, blacking out on impact. Zorex wrenched the blade free with a snarl, molten metal running from the wound. He turned back to Zira, death in his eyes. But in the moment of chaos, Zira had slipped away, crawling desperately for the cockpit. Zorex whirled on Perry's crumpled form, stalking forward. Perry forced his eyes open, the world swimming in and out of focus. His hand scrabbled at his belt, tugging free the tiny hold-out laser pistol concealed at the small of his back. Zorex loomed over him, blades raised high. Perry brought the laser up in a blur and fired from the hip. The laser punched a blackened hole through Zorex's right eye and out the back of his skull. The stink of charred meat filled the air. Zorex stood motionless for a long moment. Then he toppled like a felled tree, crashes to the deck in a clatter of metal. Perry let the laser slip from his blood-slick fingers. He tried to stand, but his body wouldn't obey. He collapsed back, blood pooling around him, his life leaking out through a dozen rents and gashes. Suddenly the deck lurched sickeningly beneath him. The freighter's engines roared to life, sending a deep shudder through the ship's frame. Perry raised his head groggily, realization dawning. Zira. She was in the cockpit. She'd fired up the engines, but why? The ship jolted again, more violently this time. A roar filled the cargo bay. Perry craned his head up, peering through a viewport, and his blood ran cold. The Void Reaper loomed before them, filling the view, and they were headed straight for it, engines howling. Zira had set the autopilot, locking in a collision course. She meant to ram the Syndicate flagship. Proximity alarms blared as the gap closed with terrifying speed. Perry clawed his way to his feet, his injuries screaming. He stumbled to the escape pods, leaving a trail of blood. Zira came sprinting into the cargo bay, eyes wide with terror and determination. Perry lurched into her path, catching her around the waist. She fought him frantically, but Perry muscled her into an escape pod through sheer, desperate strength. He slapped the launch control, sealing the pod. Zira screamed and beat at the glass, but the pod blasted free with a concussive thump, shooting clear of the freighter. Perry sagged against the pod door, watching Zira's pod recede into the blackness. He'd saved her, at least. That would have to be enough. The deck shuddered more violently, throwing Perry from his feet. Klaxons shrieked. Atmosphere alarms blared. The sound of rending metal filled the ship. Perry dragged himself towards the remaining escape pod. Zira's pod grew smaller and smaller, vanishing into the void. The freighter smashed into the Void Reaper's bridge in an eruption of flame and shrapnel. A microsecond later, the freighter's ruptured antimatter reactor detonated. The explosion blotted out the stars, a searing white flash that swallowed both ships. The shockwave caught Perry as he reached for the pod hatch. The world flipped end over end. Searing heat washed over him. Debris scythed through the disintegrating hull. Then blackness. Whoa. Zira drifted in and out of consciousness as her escape pod tumbled through the void. Time lost all meaning in the pod's close confines, with only the susurration of the life support and the distant light of far-flung stars for company. She had no way to know how long she floated alone in the vast emptiness. Days? Weeks? There was no way to mark the passage of time. Her wounds slowly knitted, the pod's autodock pumping her full of antibiotics and painkillers, but her heart stayed raw and bleeding. Perry, the human who had saved her, protected her, valued her as more than a commodity. He'd sacrificed himself for her, and she didn't even have a body to mourn over. He was just gone, atomized in the blast, with only a spreading cloud of cooling plasma to mark his existence. At some point, a ship appeared, small at first, then looming large. Zira flinched away from the glare of floodlights. A docking tube extended, sealing against her pod's hatch with a clang that shook her fillings. The hatch hissed open. Strange hands reached in, plucking her from the pod like a ripe fruit. She found herself on a stretcher, alien faces swimming above her. They were Balkan, she realized muzzily. What were Balkan doing out here? She tried to sit up, but gentle hands pressed her back down. An ampule hissed against her neck and a cool numbness spread through her. "The human," she mumbled thickly, fighting the blackness rising behind her eyes. "Did you find the human?" The Balkan conferred over her in their clicking, hissing tongue. She caught a few words. Trader ship. Escape pod. Vorkarian female. Then, as if from underwater, she heard, "Human? What human?" "Perry," she cried, struggling weakly against the hands holding her down. "Benjamin Perry, he saved me. He sacrificed." Oblivion rose up and claimed her. In the days that followed, Zira told her story again and again to a parade of incredulous Balkan. They questioned her gently but relentlessly, probing every detail. A human? Involved with the Obsidian Syndicate? Laughable. Humans were a myth, a legend from the dim mists of antiquity. No human had been seen in civilized space in living memory. And yet, here she was. A Vorkarian girl claiming to have not only seen a human, but to have been saved by him, rescued from a life of misery and degradation at the hands of her own kind. It was a story too preposterous to be believed. But Zira never wavered, never changed a detail. She clung to her story with ferocious conviction, even as the pitying looks and patronizing smiles made it clear that no one believed her. As her wounds healed, she found herself a curiosity, a sideshow attraction. The Balkan paraded her out at every opportunity, the alien girl saved from the Obsidian Syndicate by a mythical human. They clucked and fussed over her, treating her like a fragile doll, a damaged child to be coddled. But she saw the way they looked at her when they thought she couldn't see, like she was a freak, a damaged thing, her mind addled by her ordeal. She was cared for but never accepted, never truly a part of their society. She was a trophy, a conversation piece, a story to be trotted out at parties to gasps of manufactured amazement. The years slipped by in a haze of polite smiles and condescending pats on the head. Zira withdrew into herself, her psychic gifts atrophying from neglect and isolation. She spoke less and less, but she never stopped scanning the news feeds, never stopped sifting through reports of ships lost in the void, never stopped hoping for some scrap of news, some hint that Perry had somehow survived. But there was never anything. The story of the human who had saved a Vorkarian girl from a fate worse than death faded into legend, then into obscurity. Just another spacer's tall tale, told in dockside bars on 1,000 worlds to the knowing chuckles of those who knew better. But Zira never lost hope. Even as her fur grayed and her steps slowed, even as the pitying looks turned to sad shakes of the head, she never stopped believing. Perry was out there somewhere. He had to be. A man like that, a man of such courage and conviction, couldn't be snuffed out so easily. And so every night she stood at her window, staring up at the cold, uncaring stars. She pressed a hand to the glass, reaching out with all her fading psychic might, casting her thoughts into the void. "I believe in you, Benjamin Perry," she whispered, her voice cracked and feeble with age. "I will always believe in you." Tears spilled down her withered cheeks, sparkling in the starlight. Somewhere out there she knew Perry was waiting, and one day she would find him again. One day. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.